The scream didn't come from the yard. It came from inside the super seg wing, the part of the prison that never sleeps and never forgives. Alarms tripped, sirens split the air, and red strokes painted the hallway the color of a warning. A heavy door 2 cells down from me coughed out smoke. Thin and gray at first, then darker. An officer on the intercom was trying to sound calm and failing. All units to Bravo Seg. Code! Code! My guide, a veteran lieutenant named Jack Harlan, grabbed my sleeve. Against the wall, ma'am. Do not move. I could feel the concrete shake under my shoes as the control room tried to slam every door at once. Inside that sealed tier, someone pounded a window with the flat of palm. Once, twice, 3 times. The glass didn't break. The smoke got thicker. I had come here to tell a story called The Untold Horrors of America's Toughest Prisons. Now the horror was trying to crawl under the door and into my lungs. A figure stumbled into view behind the narrow window of the smoking cell. Bare forearms, a buzz head, eyes like floodlights in storm. He mouthed a word I couldn't hear. Please. The tear filled with the metallic cough of the sprinkler trying to wake up. It didn't. Somewhere, a relay clicked. Dead. Jack's jaw clenched. We've got a power fault, he said, and his eyes moved to the red box on the wall. Manual release. The rule is simple. You don't pop a door in seg without a plan. The rule is simple until smoke is licking the ceiling and a human being is staring at you through 5 inches of glass. Jack thumbed the radio. Tower, confirm water to Bravo Seg, he said. Static. More static. The smoke turned black at the edges. The man in the cell banged again, one slow, flat boom. The fire alarm screamed itself hoarse. The red box waited like a dare. Jack looked at me, one fast, apologetic glance, and reached for the latch. And that is where I leave you hanging for a breath. Because to understand why that hand hovered over the release, why the sprinklers slept, why the alarms could shake a building and still not move the right water, you have to know the road that led to this hallway, this hour, this choice. Earlier, my name is Maya Brooks. I'm a reporter. I've spent a decade writing about the American justice system from the safe side of the glass, courtrooms and press briefings, and the front steps where families cry and spokespeople say, no comment. This story started as a simple pitch. Visit 3 of the hardest lockups in the country, ask what tough means, and come home with a documentary that confirms or challenges what people think they know. What I didn't expect was how fast the places themselves would start talking back. First stop, Red Mesa State Penitentiary, Arizona. The desert doesn't forgive much. Heat lies over the yard like a sheet of iron. The sky is so bright it erases shadows until the towers draw them back in. The warden, a careful man named Alvarez, met me with a quote he had clearly used before. Prison is a city, he said, with fewer exits. We measure success in quiet days. Then he nodded toward the chow hall where a line of men shuffled in pairs. Quiet is a job. What does toughest look like? Sometimes it looks like the heat. Sometimes it looks like policies that turn on discipline like a faucet, lockdowns that stretch hours into days and days into weeks, strip searches that reduce dignity to procedure, mail rules that slice family letters into safe pieces. Sometimes it's the architecture. No place to hide and nowhere to breathe. Other times, it's the absence of choices. 2 hours out, 22 in. Or it's the choices that hurt no matter which way you step. At Red Mesa, a sergeant with sunburned forearms explained the down means down rule at yard. We say down, you go down. No hero moves. Don't be a movie. I watched as a whistle blew, a voice barked, and the entire yard flattened in a heartbeat. The concrete radiating heat, arms laced behind heads, the red from a tower rifle walking the ground like a tiny, angry star. Why so hard? I asked. Because seconds can cost a life, he said, in a tone that told me he'd paid that bill before. A low day followed. GED class in a cinder block room with a poster about commas. A volunteer chaplain offering a quiet corner where men sat in silence because silence is a rare currency, a laundry crew folding sheets like origami, because sloppy corners by attention no one wants. These were the rest in a score that otherwise pounded the same 3 notes. Control, control, control. Even the kindnesses had edges. An older inmate slid a single instant coffee packet to a younger one during count. For taste, he said. The younger man looked like he might cry. He didn't. Crying is private. Private doesn't exist. Second stop. Stone River Correctional Complex, somewhere in the Midwest. Here, the walls were old and the lights were tired. The dayroom TV played a talk show at a volume, just below argument. A woman in gray scrubs at medical told me she carried 2 clocks in her head, one for dosing and one for danger. People think the worst is the fights, she said, counting out pills like beads. The worst is being out of staff, out of time, and out of eyes. She tapped her temple. You feel it right here, like you're borrowing minutes. In the SHU, Special Housing Unit, the cells were narrower and the air felt older. A man pressed his ear to the slot for the sound of steps, anything to break the static. He slid a folded paper through. Poem, he said, shy. I asked if I could read it. He nodded, eyes quick to the camera, then back to me. It wasn't great poetry by any academic measure. It was great because it was a bridge he built with a dull pencil across a void he didn't choose. What's the worst part? I asked him. He thought, then said, You become a calendar. And the pages ripped slow. A CO named Pierce walked me to the gate after. He had that flat, professional cheer officers use when civilians are around. But at the door he paused. Ma'am, he said, don't write a horror movie. Write that it works some days. Write that it doesn't others. And on the days it doesn't, people still gotta live here. He tapped the metal with his knuckles. This place keeps its receipts. By the time I reached Iron Harbor, an older coastal facility that had been modernized in ways that just made the old parts look older, I was carrying other people's sentences in my notebook, officers' warnings, inmate strategies, family members' phone schedules that plan hope into 5-minute calls. In the administration wing, a deputy warden showed me a wall-sized flowchart with boxes for every emergency. Fire and seg, he said. Box A to see power fault. Bypass 3. He smiled in a way that told me the boxes worked until they didn't. Do you test your worst case? I asked. Drills every quarter, he said. And the thing you can't drill? He didn't answer that one. Back in Arizona for follow-ups. Because desert prisons tend to show you their truth in layers. I met Jack Harlan, the lieutenant who would end up yanking me out of the hallway when the alarm hit. Jack had the posture of a man who's seen enough to trust his boots more than his luck. He walked me through Bravo Seg. Heavy doors, small windows, air that hummed with electricity and old sweat. This is where we put people who can't be with people, he said. Sometimes for a day, sometimes longer. The goal is behavior. The reality is complicated. What's the hardest part? I asked. Knowing when structure saves a life, he said, and when it just makes suffering neat. We stopped at a cell where a man sat on the concrete, back against the wall, legs out, eyes clear. You okay? Jack asked through the intercom. Define okay. The man said, a flicker of humor. Jack cracked a smile. He writes, he told me. Essays. Always asks for extra paper. If he's writing, I worry less. How long in here? I asked the man. Depends how they count days, he said, and looked at the camera like it held the answer. On the way out, Jack pointed to the overhead sprinkler heads. We replaced a bunch last year, he said. New heads, new feed lines, new panel. Did a test. Passed. He thumped the wall with his knuckles. You pray you never need him. He said it like a joke and not a joke. We were heading toward the exit when the first alarm hiccuped to life. A short beep, then the full throat howl that says something has crossed from theory into now. Jack's radio cough, then barked. Smoke Bravo Seg. Repeat, smoke Bravo Seg. He didn't run. He walked fast. Stay behind me, he said, and I did, because sometimes the safest place is next to someone who has walked this hall 1,000 times and still looks both ways before crossing. The corridor bent twice and tightened, the way all prison hallways eventually do. We hit the inner vestibule. Another officer, fresh-faced, jaw clenched, fumbled with keys. Smoke seeped from the bottom of the door like a quiet threat. Sprinklers? Jack asked. Panel shows green. The officer said, not sounding like he believed it. We stepped into the seg wing, and the heat hit like breath. Not a flame's heat, stress heat, electricity heat. A room working too hard to be a room. The siren ricocheted off concrete until it felt like it was coming from inside my head. Through the windows of each door, eyes bloomed and vanished. Men pressed mouths to slots to gulp air that wasn't there yet. 2 cells down, the window wore a halo of smoke. A man behind it slammed his palm flat. Boom, boom, boom. Some part of my brain kept writing sentences even as the rest screamed. The hallway tasted like coin and salt. Tower, Bravo seg sprinklers not activating. Jack said into the radio, and then, manual release on cell 214 if no water in 3-2. He looked at the ceiling like he could will rain. Nothing. 1. He flipped the red cover and put his thumb on the latch. The junior officer reached for his arm. Policy says wait for team, he said, voice thin. Policy says don't let people burn while we follow a chart, Jack said, impressed. The lock thunked. The door gave half an inch and stuck, as if the building itself had opinions. Jack threw his shoulder into it, and the door came free. Smoke slithered out, kissing our throats. The man inside staggered forward, eyes wild but not blind. Jack reached for him. Hands, he shouted, because rules don't leave even when mercy arrives. The man raised both palms, and in that same second, a sound split the air, the hard whine of power dying and trying to wake again. The lights stuttered. The hallway blinked. The radio went to static. Somewhere deep in the building, a breaker made a noise like a coin dropping on concrete. Power fault. The junior officer said, stating the obvious. Then we do it the old way. Jack said, which is when the second door, 2 cells over, clicked. Not our door. A door we did not release. It swung inward a 1/4 inch. Then another 1/4. I saw fingers in the gap, thin and pale, like a question mark made of bones. Jack's eyes went to the control room window. Through the glass, a knot of staff in headphones, hands moving over a dead panel that didn't know how to listen. He looked back at the door that shouldn't be open. Who popped 216? He said into a radio that wasn't talking. The smoke thickened. The man we'd freed coughed and sagged against the wall, palms still up. Somewhere behind another window, someone yelled a wordless word. The building made its own weather. Heat from machines, cold from fear, a pressure drop that made my ears pop. The second door groaned wider like a mouth. Sometimes horror is loud. Sometimes it's the soft sound of a lock saying yes to the wrong moment. Back! Jack snapped, one hand in the air, the other gripping my sleeve. He turned his body to put himself between the half-open door and everything else. His voice found a tone I had not heard yet, the tone of a man arguing with fate. 216, back on your bunk. Now! Silence. Then a rustle, like cloth over concrete. What's in 216? I asked before I could stop myself. Jack didn't take his eyes off the door. A man who doesn't belong on the floor with anybody yet, he said. The sprinkler coughed again, once, twice, and finally woke, throwing water like it had been insulted. It hit the smoke, turned it into steam, and slammed the hallway with a new version of chaos. Wet alarms, wet radios, wet shoes, wet fear. Somewhere far away and suddenly too near, a second siren sang. The lower pitch that means more help is coming because the first help might not be enough. The man from the smoking cell slid to his knees, still showing empty hands. Jack nodded to the junior officer. Hook him and move, he said, then louder. To the hallway at large, to the building, to the story I had come to write. Hold your doors. The second door opened 1 more inch. I saw an eye in the gap. It was calm. It was measuring. It was the kind of calm that makes your skin remember old, cold stories. In that stuttering light, with water falling and alarms arguing and the building clearing its throat to speak in some worse voice, I realized I'd been wrong about what toughest meant. It wasn't just the heat or the steel or the hours that stretched like rubber and snapped back as scars. It was the way a place could stack 1,000 small failures until a handful of seconds decided whether people walked out a hallway or were carried. Jack took 1 step toward 216. The eye didn't blink. The door moved. And the next thing that happened in that corridor What came through that gap, what it carried, what it wanted, would redraw the map of everything I thought I knew about control, mercy, and the thin line that keeps the hard places of this country from swallowing themselves. The lock clicked again. The lights flickered. Jack said my name once, low and steady, like he was handing it back to me in case I lost it, and the door began to open,